Tyler had been working at the dragon stables for almost 3 years now, and he still couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about these creatures. The other workers treated them like machines with scales, but Tyler saw something different every time he looked into their eyes. The Dragon's Rest mining colony wasn't exactly paradise. It was a dusty, forgotten outpost on the edge of human space where corporations sent people who had nowhere else to go. The pay was terrible, the food was worse, and most folks were just counting down the days until they could afford a ticket off this rock. But Tyler didn't mind the work. Someone had to take care of the dragons. That's what everyone called them anyway, though the official company term was atmospheric processing units. These massive creatures stood nearly 20 feet tall, with scales that ranged from deep crimson to silver blue. They'd been designed by some fancy genetics lab to eat toxic minerals and breathe out clean air. At least, that's what the orientation video said. The morning shift started like any other. Tyler grabbed his equipment cart and headed down the long corridor to the main stable area. The artificial lights flickered overhead, casting strange shadows on the metal walls. He could already hear the low rumbling sounds the dragons made, a constant background noise that most workers learned to ignore. "Morning, Blaze," Tyler called out as he approached the first containment pen. The massive red dragon lifted his scarred head, watching Tyler with one golden eye. "Yeah, I see that leg is still bothering you. Let me finish the rounds and I'll take a proper look." The other stable hands were already leaving, their shift done. A guy named Rick passed by, shaking his head. "You talk to those things way too much, Tyler. They're just animals. Expensive ones, sure, but still just animals." Tyler didn't bother arguing anymore. He tried explaining his observations before, how the dragons seemed to understand complex commands, how they showed preferences and personalities. But nobody wanted to hear it. To them, the dragons were just another piece of mining equipment that happened to eat and breathe. He moved through the stables methodically, checking food dispensers, scanning for injuries, making sure the atmospheric processors were functioning. There were 20 dragons total in this facility, each one unique. Storm had a habit of arranging rocks in patterns. Cinder always turned her head when Tyler mentioned specific words. Frost seemed to get agitated when the younger dragons were distressed. But it was Amber who worried him most today. The golden-scaled female had been acting strange all week. She barely touched her mineral feed and kept rubbing her back against the containment barrier. Tyler had filed 3 reports with the facility supervisor, but nobody seemed concerned. As long as the dragons kept processing the atmosphere, management didn't care about minor behavioral changes. Tyler entered Amber's pen slowly, speaking in a low, calm voice. "Hey girl, let's see what's going on with you." Amber lowered her massive head, allowing Tyler to approach. This alone would have shocked most of the other handlers. The official protocol was to use shock prods and restraints for any close contact, but Tyler had learned that respect worked better than fear. As he walked around her enormous body, running a handheld scanner along her scales, Tyler froze. Growing along Amber's spine were crystalline formations he'd never seen before. They pulsed with a faint inner light, almost like a heartbeat. The scanner went haywire, displaying readings that made no sense. "What in the world?" Tyler muttered, reaching out carefully. The moment his fingers touched the largest crystal, everything changed. Light exploded behind Tyler's eyes. Not painful but overwhelming. Images flooded his mind, moving too fast to fully process. He saw stars being born and dying, vast cities floating in space, beings of pure energy dancing between dimensions. And through it all, a voice, ancient and patient, whispered directly into his thoughts. "Finally, after so long. One who listens, one who sees." Tyler gasped and pulled his hand back, stumbling against the pen wall. His heart hammered in his chest. Amber hadn't moved, but her golden eye was fixed on him with unmistakable intelligence. Not the simple awareness of a smart animal, but the knowing gaze of a thinking, feeling person. "You're not just animals," Tyler whispered. "You never were." Amber made a low sound, something between a rumble and a purr. Through the fading echo of that strange connection, Tyler felt something like agreement, like relief, like hope. He looked around the stable with new eyes. All 20 dragons were watching him now, absolutely still. How long had they been waiting? How long had they been trapped in these pens, modified and used, unable to communicate what they really were? Tyler's hands shook as he pulled out his scanner again, checking the other dragons from outside their pens. Blaze had small crystal formations starting along his neck. So did Storm and Cinder. It was happening to all of them. Something was waking up. Tyler knew he should report this immediately. The protocol was clear about any unusual biological changes. But something held him back. If he reported this, they'd take the dragons away for study. They'd treat them like specimens, not like the intelligent beings Tyler now suspected they were. He needed time to understand what was happening. Time to figure out what these creatures really were and what they needed. "I'll help you," Tyler promised quietly, looking at Amber. "Whatever this is, whatever you need, I'll find a way." The dragon's eye seemed to brighten, and Tyler felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the stable's temperature. Somewhere deep in his mind, in a place he didn't know existed until that moment, he felt Amber's gratitude. Tyler left the stable that evening with his mind racing. He had no idea what he'd gotten himself into, but one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. The forgotten stable boy had just discovered something that would change everything. Tyler barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw those images again, felt that ancient voice whispering in his mind. He kept checking his hands, half expecting to see them glowing or change somehow, but they looked exactly the same. Calloused, dirty, ordinary. But nothing felt ordinary anymore. He arrived at the stables 2 hours before his shift started, when the facility was still quiet and dark. The security system recognized his badge and let him through without question. Nobody cared if the stable hand showed up early. He was probably the only person in the entire colony who actually wanted to spend extra time with the dragons. Amber was waiting for him. Tyler could tell she'd been watching the door, and the moment he stepped into view, she moved to the front of her pen. The crystalline formations along her spine glowed brighter in the dim light. "Okay," Tyler said softly, pulling up a chair. "I'm here. I'm listening. Help me understand what's happening to you." He reached out and touched the crystals again, and this time he was ready for the rush of information. It came slower now, more controlled, like Amber was learning how to communicate with him properly. And what Tyler learned in those next few hours changed everything he thought he knew about the universe. The dragons weren't created by human scientists at all. They were called the Dracones, an ancient species that had existed millions of years before humanity even learned to make fire. They'd been explorers, teachers, guardians of knowledge that spanned galaxies. But the universe had grown violent and chaotic, filled with wars and species destroying themselves with technologies they weren't ready for. So the Dracones made a choice. They entered a voluntary sleep, a stasis so deep it mimicked death, and scattered themselves across the galaxy. They would wait for the universe to grow up, to evolve into something wiser. They'd encoded their bodies to wake only when they sensed the right conditions, the right kind of consciousness nearby. But something had gone wrong. Human scientists found their sleeping forms on a dozen different worlds, mistook them for fossils of extinct creatures, and brought them to laboratories. They'd run genetic tests, made modifications, turned these ancient beings into tools without ever realizing what they'd done. The modifications had damaged them, trapped them in weakened bodies, blocked their ability to communicate. For decades, the Dracones had been aware but unable to wake fully, unable to speak, forced to watch as they were used like animals. Until now. "You've been awake this whole time?" Tyler asked, his voice shaking. "All of you? Aware of everything?" The feeling that came back wasn't quite words, but Tyler understood it perfectly. "Not fully awake," Amber communicated. "Like dreaming. Aware but distant. Unable to reach out. Until you. But why me? I'm nobody special. Just a guy who cleans stables." This time the response came with images. Tyler saw himself through Amber's eyes over the past 3 years. Saw himself talking to the dragons when everyone else stayed silent. Saw himself carefully treating injuries while other handlers used shock prods. Saw himself bringing Storm extra rocks to arrange because he noticed it made her calm. Small acts of kindness that nobody else had bothered with. "You saw us as people," Amber's thoughts whispered. "Not as tools. Not as property. As living beings worthy of respect. Your mind reached out with compassion and our consciousness could finally reach back." Tyler wiped his eyes, not even ashamed of the tears. "The crystals? What are they?" "Our true nature emerging. The genetic chains breaking. We are healing but slowly. We need time and protection to fully awaken. How many of you are there? Just here or everywhere?" The answer made Tyler's breath catch. "Everywhere humans took us. Dozens of colonies. Hundreds of us. All beginning to wake because you opened the first door. The awakening spreads through our connected consciousness." Tyler stood up and paced the length of the pen. This was massive, way bigger than anything he could handle alone. These weren't just dragons or even just intelligent aliens. They were ancient beings with knowledge that could change everything humanity understood about the universe. "I have to tell someone," Tyler said. "The colony administrators or the Galactic Council, or someone who can help protect you properly." Fear pulsed through their connection. They will see us as threats or resources, either destroy us or use us. We have seen it before in other species, other times. Not everyone is like that, Tyler argued. There are good people out there, scientists and diplomats who would understand. Perhaps. Amber's thoughts carried uncertainty. But we are vulnerable now. Still weak. Still trapped in these modified forms. If the wrong people learn what we are before we finish awakening, we may never get another chance. Tyler understood the problem. The colony was owned by a massive corporation that saw everything in terms of profit and loss. If they knew the dragons were actually ancient aliens with advanced knowledge, they'd either try to weaponize them or sell them to the highest bidder. And the Galactic Council, while better, still had members who'd see the Draconis as a threat to the current balance of power. So what do we do? Tyler asked. I can't exactly hide 20 waking ancient aliens in a mining colony stable. We need time. Weeks, perhaps months. The crystalline growth must complete. Our bodies must remember their true forms. And we must build stronger connections with others like you. Humans who will stand with us. Others like me? I don't even know what I am. Some kind of interpreter? You are a bridge, Amber communicated, and Tyler felt warmth in the thought. A connection between our kind and yours. Every species that ever learned from us had such bridges. People with the right neural pattern, the right heart. We can share our knowledge through you. Before Tyler could respond, the stable's alarm system blared to life. Red lights flashed throughout the facility, and an automated voice announced, "Unusual energy signatures detected. Security teams responding. All personnel evacuate to safe zones." Tyler's stomach dropped. The crystalline growths must be giving off some kind of radiation or energy that the colony sensors finally picked up. He had minutes, maybe less, before armed security forces arrived. He looked at Amber, then at the other dragons now stirring in their pens. Blaze watched him with knowing eyes. Storm had moved to the front of her enclosure. They were all waiting to see what he would do. The safe choice was to leave, to follow the evacuation order and let the authorities handle it. He could claim ignorance, say he had no idea what was happening. Keep his head down and his job secure. But Tyler had never been good at the safe choice. He moved to the main control panel and started overriding locks, his fingers flying across the interface. One by one the pen doors hissed open. The dragons didn't rush out or panic. They moved slowly, deliberately, gathering in the main stable yard. "I'm with you," Tyler said firmly. "Whatever happens next, I'm with you." Through his connection with Amber, Tyler felt something that might have been hope. Or maybe faith. The ancient beings had waited millions of years for the galaxy to be ready for them. And they'd chosen a simple stable hand to be their voice. The sound of boots echoed in the corridor outside. Security was here. It was time to make a stand. The security team burst through the stable doors with weapons drawn, and Tyler felt his heart hammering so hard he thought it might break through his ribs. There were at least 15 armed guards, all wearing full tactical gear and carrying shock rifles designed to take down the dragons if they got aggressive. Leading them was Director Karen Mills, the head of colony security. She was a tough woman in her 50s who'd spent 20 years in corporate enforcement before taking this posting. Tyler had only spoken to her once before, and she'd barely looked at him. To her, he was just another low-level worker. But she was looking at him now. "Tyler Bennett," she said, her voice amplified by her helmet speakers. "Step away from those creatures immediately. We're reading dangerous energy spikes coming from this facility. The entire area is being quarantined until we determine the threat level." Tyler stood his ground, acutely aware of the 20 massive dragons behind him. He could feel Amber's presence in his mind, calm and steady, giving him strength. "There's no threat, Director Mills. These aren't just creatures. They're intelligent beings and they're waking up from a very long sleep." One of the security guards laughed. "Kid's been breathing too much processed air. The dragons are messing with his head." But Mills didn't laugh. She'd seen the sensor readings herself. The energy patterns coming from the stable didn't match anything in the company database. "Tyler, I need you to listen very carefully. Whatever you think is happening here, we have protocols. These dragons are corporate property worth millions of credits each. We can't have unstable biological assets roaming free." "They're not property," Tyler said, and he heard his own voice getting stronger. "They never were. We found them sleeping and modified them without understanding what they actually are. Their name is Draconis. They're millions of years old, and they've been trapped and used while being fully aware of what was happening to them." Mills made a hand signal and her team started to spread out, trying to surround the dragons. Tyler felt Amber shift behind him, felt the other dragons moving into formation. Not aggressive, just protective. I really don't want to hurt you, Tyler, Mills said, and she actually sounded sincere. But I will if you don't move. This is your last warning. Tyler's mind raced. He couldn't fight trained security forces. He had no weapons, no backup, nothing except his connection to these ancient beings who were still too weak to defend themselves properly. Everything he'd done in the past 3 years, all the care and respect he'd shown, came down to this moment. Amber, he whispered. If there was ever a time to show them what you really are, it's now. He felt her agreement pulse through their connection. Amber stepped forward, her massive form moving with a grace that didn't match her supposedly engineered body. The security team tensed, fingers tightening on triggers. But Amber didn't attack. Instead, she raised her great head high and opened her mouth. What came out wasn't a roar or a screech. It was a sound unlike anything Tyler had ever heard, a deep harmonic tone that seemed to resonate in his bones, in the air itself, in the very foundation of the building. It wasn't loud, but it was powerful in a way that had nothing to do with volume. And then the other dragons joined her. One by one, 19 more voices added to the harmony. Blaze's deep bass rumble. Storm's higher crystalline note. Cinder's warm middle tone. Each dragon added their own frequency to the song, and together they created something that made Tyler's eyes water. It was beautiful and ancient and utterly deliberate. The security team had stopped advancing. Several guards had actually lowered their weapons slightly, staring in confusion and awe. This wasn't animal behavior. This was coordinated, purposeful communication. The harmony built for almost 30 seconds, filling the stable with sound that seemed to touch something deep in every human present. Tyler saw one guard wipe her eyes. Another had gone completely still, his weapon hanging forgotten at his side. Then, in perfect synchronization, all 20 dragons lowered their heads toward Tyler. It wasn't a bow of submission. It was a gesture of respect and acknowledgement. A clear, unmistakable statement that the dragons recognized Tyler as someone important, someone they'd chosen. The movement was so coordinated, so obviously intentional, that it couldn't be mistaken for anything else. Mills took a step back, her hand dropping away from her weapon. What? How did they? They're showing you, Tyler said quietly. They're intelligent. They're aware. And they're choosing to communicate peacefully even though you came in here threatening them. Every security camera in the facility had been recording. Tyler knew that hundreds of workers across the colony would be watching these feeds right now. The corporate offices on 3 different planets would be seeing this. There was no way to hide what had just happened or explain it away as malfunction or animal behavior. One of the younger security guards spoke up, his voice shaking slightly. Director, I've worked with military-grade AI systems that couldn't coordinate movement that precisely. Those things just performed a synchronized action with zero communication lag. Mills was quiet for a long moment, her mind clearly racing. She'd come here expecting a simple containment situation, maybe some malfunctioning equipment or an escaped dragon. Instead, she was facing something that challenged everything the colony understood about these creatures. Lower your weapons, she finally ordered. Her team hesitated, but they obeyed. Tyler, I need you to explain exactly what's been happening here. From the beginning. And someone get me a direct line to corporate headquarters right now. Tyler felt relief wash through him, though he knew this was just the first hurdle. Director, I'll tell you everything I know. But I need your word that you won't hurt them while we figure this out. They're vulnerable right now. They're still healing from what was done to them. Mills pulled off her helmet, revealing a tired, weathered face. She looked at the dragons, really looked at them perhaps for the first time. 3 years I've been running security for this facility. 3 years of treating these things like expensive livestock. And you're telling me they've been aware the whole time. Not fully awake, Tyler said. But aware enough. Amber showed me memories. They knew what was happening to them. They just couldn't communicate it until the awakening started. One of the dragons, the silver blue one Tyler called Frost, made a low sound. Not threatening, almost gentle. Mills flinched but held her ground. This is way above my pay grade, she muttered. Corporate is going to lose their minds. The Galactic Council is going to get involved. We're talking about potential first contact with an unknown species, except we've been enslaving them for decades without knowing it. They're not unknown, Tyler said. They're the Draconis. Ancient records mention them. Every major civilization has legends about teachers who came from the stars and helped younger species. That's them. That's who we've been using to process our toxic mining waste. Mills closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, Tyler saw something that looked like respect. You did the right thing, kid. Standing up to armed security with nothing but conviction. That took guts. I wasn't going to let anyone hurt them, Tyler said simply. I know. Mills turned to her team. Establish a perimeter but keep weapons holstered. These dragons are not to be treated as threats unless they demonstrate hostile action. And someone get me every xenobiologist and first contact specialist within 10 light years. We're going to need experts here yesterday. Tyler felt Amber's gratitude flowing through their connection. They'd made it through the first crisis, but he knew the real challenges were just beginning. Word would spread fast. Scientists would want to study the dragons. Governments would want to control them. Corporations would fight to keep their valuable assets. But for now the dragons were safe. And they had their first human ally in a position of authority. Mills walked closer to Tyler, lowering her voice. Tell me honestly, are they dangerous? Do we need to worry about them attacking anyone? Tyler thought about the patience these beings had shown, waiting millions of years. The gentleness in Amber's communication. The careful way they demonstrated their intelligence without threatening anyone. No, he said. They're the furthest thing from dangerous. They're teachers. And we've got a lot to learn. The footage went viral within 6 hours. Tyler watched from the stable's observation room as the video spread across every human colony in the sector. Someone had leaked the security recording, and now billions of people were watching 20 dragons bow their heads to a simple stable hand. The comment sections exploded. News networks interrupted regular programming. Scientific forums crashed from too much traffic. Most people couldn't believe it was real. They claimed it was fake, corporate propaganda or some kind of elaborate hoax. But there were too many angles, too many witnesses, too much corroborating data from the facility's sensors. The energy signatures alone proved something extraordinary was happening. By the second day, the Galactic Council had dispatched a formal investigation team. And that's when Ambassador Jessica Torres arrived. Tyler had never met anyone from the Galactic Council before. He'd seen them on news broadcasts, of course, these important diplomats who negotiated treaties between species and settled disputes across star systems. He never imagined one would want to talk to him. Jessica was younger than he expected, maybe in her early 40s, with sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She found Tyler in Amber's pen, where he'd been spending most of his time since the standoff with security. Mr. Bennett, she said, extending her hand. I'm Ambassador Torres. I've been authorized by the Council to investigate what's happening here personally. Tyler shook her hand, suddenly very aware that he was covered in stable dust and probably didn't smell great. Just Tyler is fine. And I'll help however I can, but Amber can explain things better than me. Jessica's eyebrow raised. Amber? You've named them? All of them. They've had those names for years. I just didn't know they could understand me until recently. Tyler gestured to the golden dragon resting nearby. Amber's the one I'm most connected to. She's been teaching me about what they really are. The ambassador pulled out a holographic display device. Before we go further, I need to show you something. The Council has been doing research since your video surfaced. We found references in our historical archives that I think you need to see. She activated the display, and ancient text began scrolling past, accompanied by fragmentary images. Tyler couldn't read most of it, written in languages that didn't exist anymore, but the pictures were clear enough. Dragons. Beings that looked exactly like the Draconis, shown alongside dozens of different alien species. Every major civilization in this sector has legends about them, Jessica explained. The Zenthari call them the first teachers. The Calvin have stories about star guardians who helped them survive their planet's climate collapse. The Threen credit beings matching this exact description with teaching them faster than light travel. Tyler felt Amber's attention focusing on the display through their connection. They remember, he said softly. Amber recognizes some of those species. She's showing me memories of teaching them, helping them through dangerous periods of technological development. Jessica sat down on a nearby equipment crate, her professional demeanor cracking slightly. Do you understand what this means? These beings aren't just intelligent aliens. They're potentially the oldest continuous civilization in known space. They've been guiding the development of younger species for millions of years. And we turned them into air filters, Tyler said bitterly. We found them sleeping and decided to use them like tools. You didn't know, Jessica said gently. Nobody knew. But now we do, and we need to figure out what happens next. Over the next week, more people arrived at Draken's Rest. Xenobiologists who wanted to study the dragon's biology. Historians eager to access their memories. Linguists trying to decode the harmonic language. The small mining colony transformed into the most important location in human space practically overnight. But not everyone was happy about the discovery. The Stellar Mining Corporation, which owned both the colony and the dragons, held an emergency board meeting. Tyler wasn't invited, but he heard about it through Director Mills, who'd become an unexpected ally. The corporation's lawyers argued that regardless of the dragons' origins, they were still legally property. The company had invested billions in acquiring and maintaining them. They weren't about to give that up without a fight. Other colonies started reporting similar awakenings. A facility on New Terra sent panicked messages about their dragons developing crystalline growths. A deep space mining station reported that their atmospheric processors were singing in harmony during shift changes. Handlers across dozens of worlds were experiencing the same visions and connections Tyler had. The awakening was spreading just like Amber had said it would. Hundreds of Draconis, all waking up simultaneously because one stable hand had shown them basic kindness. Tyler found himself giving the same explanation over and over to different scientists and officials. Yes, the dragons were intelligent. Yes, they'd been aware the whole time. Yes, they had knowledge that could revolutionize human understanding of physics, biology, and engineering. No, they weren't angry about what had been done to them. They understood that humanity hadn't known what they were doing. But would the Draconis share their knowledge? That question came up in every meeting, every interview, every briefing. Everyone wanted to know what these ancient beings could teach them, what technologies they could unlock, what advantages they could gain. It made Tyler sick to his stomach. Even after learning the truth, people still saw the dragons as resources to exploit, just in a different way. Ambassador Torres seemed to sense his frustration. She found him one evening sitting outside Amber's pen, watching the stars through the facility's transparent ceiling panels. "You're wondering if anything has really changed," she said, sitting down beside him. "People keep asking what they can get from the Draconis," Tyler said. "Not how they can help them or what they need or how to make up for decades of enslavement. Just what they can get." Jessica nodded slowly. "I won't lie to you. There are members of the council who see this exactly that way. They're already proposing research agreements, knowledge-sharing treaties, technology transfers. All very formal and legal, but yes, still treating the Draconis as a means to an end." "Amber says they've seen this before," Tyler said. "Other species who wanted to learn from them but didn't really respect them. That's part of why they went to sleep in the first place. The galaxy got too focused on power and too far away from wisdom." "So what do they want?" Jessica asked. "The Draconis, I mean. What would make them willing to share what they know?" Tyler thought about the conversations he'd had with Amber through their crystalline connection. The images and feelings she'd shared about what the Draconis valued, what they'd been hoping to find when they finally woke up. "They want students, not customers," he said finally. "They want people who are willing to learn with humility, who understand that knowledge without wisdom is dangerous. They've watched civilizations destroy themselves by developing technologies they weren't emotionally ready for. They don't want to help that happen again." Jessica pulled out a small recording device. "Would you be willing to repeat that to the full council? They're holding a session next week to decide how to proceed. Your testimony could make a difference." Tyler laughed, though there wasn't much humor in it. "I'm a stable hand. Why would the Galactic Council care what I think?" "Because you're the first human the Draconis chose to trust," Jessica said seriously. "That makes you one of the most important people in the galaxy right now, whether you like it or not. And honestly, I think your perspective is exactly what the council needs to hear." Through his connection with Amber, Tyler felt encouragement. She believed in him. They all did. These ancient beings who had shaped civilizations and witnessed the rise and fall of empires had chosen a simple, ordinary person to be their voice. It was terrifying. But Tyler knew he couldn't walk away. "Okay," he said. "I'll testify. But I'm going to tell them the truth, even if it's not what they want to hear." Jessica smiled. "I wouldn't expect anything less." The galaxy was watching. And Tyler was about to tell them that humanity needed to earn the privilege of learning from the Draconis. They couldn't just take it. 3 months later, Tyler stood in the Grand Amphitheater on Draken's Rest, facing the largest gathering of galactic representatives he'd ever seen. The mining colony had been completely transformed. Where there used to be dusty equipment yards and industrial warehouses, now stood beautiful open structures designed to accommodate beings of all sizes and species. Tyler wore the same simple work clothes he always did. They'd offered him formal robes, fancy suits, all kinds of official-looking outfits. He'd turned them all down. If the Galactic Council wanted to hear from him, they could hear from the real him, stable dust and all. Behind him, Amber and the other dragons rested on specially designed platforms. Their crystalline growths had fully developed now, creating intricate patterns along their bodies that pulsed with soft light. They were still regaining their full strength, still healing from the genetic modifications that had crippled them for so long, but the transformation was remarkable. They looked more majestic now, more like the ancient beings they truly were. The amphitheater held representatives from 47 different species. Tyler recognized some from news broadcasts: the towering Zenthri with their 4 arms, the floating Calvin who communicated through bioluminescent patterns, the crystalline Threne who predated human spaceflight by thousands of years. All of them were here because of what happened in a forgotten stable on a backwater mining colony. Ambassador Torres stood at the podium, presenting the council's findings. She'd spent weeks compiling evidence, interviewing witnesses, and studying the historical records. Now she was laying it all out for the assembled representatives. The beings we know as dragons are definitively identified as the Dracones, an ancient species referenced in the historical records of every major civilization in this sector, Jessica said, her voice carrying through the amphitheater's sound system. They are not bioengineered constructs. They are sentient beings who entered voluntary stasis approximately 3.7 million years ago. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Some species had already accepted this truth, but others were still struggling with it. Tyler watched their reactions, trying to gauge who might become allies and who might cause problems. Furthermore, Jessica continued, evidence suggests that the Dracones have historically served as teachers and guides to developing civilizations. Many of our most significant technological and philosophical advances can be traced back to periods when Dracones were known to be active in our regions of space. A Zenthri representative stood, their translator device converting their deep rumbling speech into standard galactic language. If these beings are so advanced, why did they allow themselves to be captured and modified? Why didn't they resist? Tyler felt Amber's presence in his mind, feeding him the answer through their connection. He stepped forward before Jessica could respond. Because they were asleep, Tyler said, his voice steadier than he felt. Completely dormant. When human scientists found them, they were in such a deep stasis that they appeared to be fossils. The Dracones didn't wake up until recently because they were waiting for the right conditions. They were waiting for someone who would see them as people, not as tools. Another representative, this one Calvin, spoke up, their patterns flashing rapidly. And you were that someone? A simple maintenance worker? Tyler nodded. Yeah, I guess I was. I just treated them with respect. Talked to them like they mattered. That's all it took. Makes you wonder what kind of galaxy we've built if basic kindness is that rare. The comment drew silence. Tyler hadn't meant it as an insult, but he could tell it landed hard. These were diplomats and leaders, people who probably thought of themselves as enlightened and advanced. But none of them had recognized what the dragons really were. It took a stable hand to figure it out. A Threne representative, their crystalline body refracting light in rainbow patterns, asked the question everyone was thinking. What do the Dracones want from us now? What are their terms for sharing their knowledge? Tyler looked back at Amber. Her golden eyes met his, and he felt the weight of her trust. This was the moment everything had been building toward. The answer he gave now would shape humanity's future and potentially the future of every species in the Council. They don't have terms, Tyler said carefully. They're not here to make deals or negotiate treaties. The Dracones are teachers. They always have been. They want to help younger species navigate the dangers that come with advanced technology, the same dangers that destroyed so many civilizations in the past. He took a breath, knowing the next part was crucial. But they will only teach those who approach learning with humility and respect. They've watched too many species gain powerful knowledge and use it to destroy themselves or others. They went to sleep because the galaxy became obsessed with power instead of wisdom. They're not going to contribute to that happening again. A human representative from one of the core worlds stood up, clearly agitated. So they're going to judge whether we're worthy? Decide who gets access to their knowledge and who doesn't? No, Tyler said firmly. We're going to judge ourselves. The Dracones aren't going to test us or evaluate us. They're just going to offer to teach, and it's up to each species, each individual, to decide if they're willing to learn the right way. With patience. With respect. Understanding that some knowledge comes with responsibilities we might not be ready for. Amber made a low harmonic sound, and Tyler felt approval flowing through their connection. He was getting it right, saying what needed to be said. Ambassador Torres stepped forward again. The Council has a proposal. We recommend establishing the first interspecies academy right here on Draken's Rest. A place where beings from across the galaxy can come to learn from the Dracones. Not a research facility or a technology transfer station. An actual school, built on principles of mutual respect and shared growth. The vote took 2 hours of debate. Some representatives argued that the Draconis should be required to share their knowledge freely as reparations for the deception humans had unknowingly perpetrated. Others worried about giving too much power to ancient beings whose true capabilities were still unknown. But in the end, the vote passed unanimously. The Draconis would be recognized as a sovereign species with full rights and protections. The Academy would be established. And the corporations that had enslaved them would face significant penalties and restrictions. Tyler was named the Academy's Human Coordinator, a title that still felt surreal. People kept calling him Ambassador Bennett now, which made him laugh every time. He was still just a guy who cleaned stables and cared about animals. Except now those animals were ancient beings who could manipulate gravity and perceive dimensions humans couldn't even imagine. The formal ceremony ended and the representatives began filing out, already discussing what they'd learned and what came next. Tyler walked back to Amber's platform, where she'd been resting throughout the proceedings. "We did it," he said softly, running his hand along her warm scales. "You're free. All of you." Amber's response filled his mind with warmth and something that felt like laughter. Free to work harder than ever, teaching impatient youngsters who think they know everything. "Hey, some of us youngsters are willing to learn," Tyler protested with a smile. "That is why we chose you." Amber's thoughts carried affection. In a galaxy focused on power and achievement, you valued simple kindness. You saw worth in beings others dismissed. That is the foundation of true wisdom. Director Mills approached, looking uncomfortable in the formal uniform she'd been required to wear for the ceremony. "Never thought I'd see the day when a mining colony becomes the most important educational institution in the sector. Your life's about to get really complicated, kid." "It's already complicated," Tyler said. "But it's worth it." Students would start arriving next month. Beings from dozens of species, all eager to learn from the Draconis. Tyler had already reviewed the applications, thousands of them, from scientists and philosophers, engineers and artists. The Academy would accept only a few hundred to start, those who showed genuine humility and willingness to learn. But Tyler still made time every single morning to do his rounds. He checked on Blaze's healing leg, made sure Storm had enough rocks to arrange, verified that Cinder's feeding schedule was working. The other coordinators thought it was strange that he insisted on doing basic stable work when he had much more important responsibilities now. But to Tyler, this was the most important work of all. "You know I can regulate my own atmospheric needs now, right?" Amber communicated one morning as Tyler adjusted the temperature controls in her quarters. "I could probably terraform an entire planet if I wanted to." "I know," Tyler said, making a note on his data pad about a slight humidity imbalance. "But you bowed to me, remember? So I'm going to make sure you're comfortable. That's the deal." Amber's laughter resonated through his mind like distant thunder. "This is why we waited so long. This is why we had faith that evolution would eventually produce beings worthy of partnership. You have power over us now, recognition and authority, but you still choose service and care." Tyler finished his checks and sat down beside her massive form, looking out at the growing campus beyond the stable walls. "I never wanted power. I just wanted to help. And that, Tyler Bennett, is what makes you powerful. The galaxy will learn from us, yes. But perhaps we will also learn from humans like you. Kindness is not weakness. Service is not submission. These are lessons even ancient beings sometimes forget." Ships were landing every day now, bringing students and teachers, supplies and equipment. The forgotten mining colony was becoming something new, something that might change the entire galaxy. And it all started because one person treated living beings with basic dignity. Tyler smiled, resting his hand on Amber's warm scales. The universe was vast and full of wonders, but sometimes the most important thing was right here. Taking care of someone who mattered. Honoring the connection between beings who chose to trust each other. The stable hand had helped change the galaxy. But he'd never stop being a stable hand at heart. And the ancient dragons wouldn't have it any other way. "Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.